Good morning. We continue the review of the conclusion of Hemshech Ayin Beis as we review the essay that I wrote on this. And we finished chapter 6 of this essay. So middle of page 36. We'll review what we learned yesterday and continue. The essay is posted at our WhatsApp group, Ayin Beis group. As I said, we're on page 36, middle of the page. So yesterday we concluded a number of contributions and additions that Ayin Beis made to the entire scheme of things, and namely to the Maimer HaMagbil L'Sheves. And I broke it into 8 particular points. Those points were the Iskalus of Mamayla Lamata Mamata Lamayla, how Neshama Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam in Meir Mitzvah and in Torah you find both elements, even though each of them has a primary function. Point number 2 was about, let me go through it, let me do it inside, was the connection of Ner Mitzvah to Tfilas Krishma. Point 3 was the connection of Neshamas to Tfilah, Ni Tfilah. Number 4 was the Maila of Torah on the Neshama and Tfilah. 5 was the opposite, the Maila of Neshama and Tfilah over Torah. 6, point number 6 was the Maila of Torah on Mitzvahs. Point number 7, the Maila of Mitzvahs on Torah. And finally, point number 8 is the Maila of Neshama on Mitzvahs, that Neshama has, as we discussed, an element of Oir in it as well, and Gilui. Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, and as a result, through the Mesiras Nefesh of the Neshama, of course with the siyua and support of Torah Oir, as it elevates, it has the ability to also reveal the Inyan Atzmi, the Oir Atzmi in mitzvahs, which on its own would be concealed because it's just Ratzon Elyon. Torah Oir is a Gilui. Mitzvahs is just the Ratzon itself manifesting in Elam Hazar Gashmi, the Kelim. So both the mitzvahs and the Neshama are rooted in Kelim, but the Neshamas have one more element in them, that they're rooted, like he said, in the highest levels in Atzmus, which essentially is probably, doesn't say it explicitly, but even higher than Eiris and Kelim, called it the Helama Atzmi. And as a result, it has that ability not just to draw down Oir, which is still commensurate to the containers, that's mitzvahs, but to be mahapach the Keli to Oir. A Keli nepach la'Oir. So that is the additional element that mitzvahs that Neshama adds into mitzvahs. And with that concludes these 8 points, are all additions that came from Ayin Beis, in understanding the broader scheme, as I said, and scope of Maimer HaMagbi, and in general the theme of the fulfillment of the Kavanah Elyena, the higher purpose, through Neshamas, Mitzvahs, and Torah. Now the next chapter, which we're going to begin now, is taking us back to the bigger picture of the whole Ayin Beis. Because remember, assuming that I'm correct in all these 6 chapters that we've learned so far, that we have the answers to all the questions, and I'll just go over it quickly again. Chapter 1, the effect of the Izbananus of Shema Yisrael, Hashem Echad, on the animal soul. The Rebbe Rashab never gets back to the animal soul. So I'm now spelling out the order of how Hemshech Ayin Beis most likely would have concluded. So after what we have on page 1472, he would have continued the effect on the animal soul. That I review in chapter 1 of the essay. Then what is Ner Mitzvah and the 3 components of the Psila, Shemen, and Oir in Ner Mitzvah, the wick, the oil, and the light that it creates in Mitzvah. Chapter 3, so this is the order that Ayin Beis would go. Chapter 3 would be, what is Torah Oir? Chapter 4, what is Riyah? The connection of Torah Oir to Riyah, to vision. Chapter 5 is what was chapter 5? Chapter 5 was, let me just remember. I remember chapter 5 now. I think was let me see. I summed them all up actually last chapter in the beginning. Just looking it up. Yeah, chapter 5. No, my mistake. Chapter 4 is the connection and interaction of the three neshama, Torah, mitzvahs, and Torah. Chapter 5, Riyah, and chapter 6, like we just finished, is all about the additions, the primary additions of Ayin Beis back to Amagbir L'Sheves. So now, if this is all correct, and we're assuming it's correct, this only connects us to to volume 2 of Ayin Beis, where he started about Tefillah and Torah. But there are questions in the beginning of Ayin Beis that Rebbe Rashab never answered. So very likely, after tying together everything about neshamas, mitzvahs, Torah, like we just spoke about, the first 6 chapters, we have to go back to what would be the end of Ayin Beis. What would the Rebbe Rashab actually end? And the way it is, like in Samach Vav, for example, or in other Hemshechim, he goes back to the initial questions he asked in the beginning of the Hemshech. So that's what we're going to do in chapter 7. Tie it all up together to the beginning of the Hemshech, so you'll have the whole picture. And that would be the real conclusion of Ayin Beis. Again, it's all speculation because we don't know what the Rebbe Rashab would have actually written, what he would have added, what he would have. He may have added a whole bunch of things that I couldn't even guess. But what I do know is that based on what we've learned, and based on what it says in the Maimer and the hints and indicators the Rebbe Rashab did give us, we will be able to figure out also the conclusion of Hemshech Ayin Beis. As you'll see me develop this in chapter 7 now that we're going to begin. So in chapter 7, we're page 36 of the essay posted again at Ayin Beis, at our WhatsApp Ayin Beis group. We'll put it up on the ayinbeis.com site when I finish editing all the details. Then we'll have the cleanest version there, of editing typos and other little details that I'm still tweaking. Okay, so ready to go to chapter 7. I will stop if anybody wants to ask anything about what I've said till here, the first 6 chapters, because this is going to go, as I said, we're not talking anymore about Torah mitzvahs per se. We will be talking about Torah mitzvahs and neshamas, but I said much broader scheme because we're going back to the central theme of Ayin Beis from the beginning, namely Keser. Keser is going to play a tremendous role here in understanding the whole Hemshech, and of course, you'll see the connection to the first 6 chapters once we finish chapter 7. But anyone has any questions, any points you want me to clarify? Okay. So Siyam Hemshech Terav Perek Zayin, middle of page 36. Al pi kol hamavur le'il. Based on everything that was explained earlier, b'shisha prakim harashenim shel maimer zeh, in the first 6 chapters of this essay, ubefrad beperek hakodim, and specifically in the previous chapter, bebir hagimel inyanim shel ha'aveda v'hayichud mamat l'maylo, in explaining the 3, you could say stages, or the 3 points, 3 stages of the Aveda and the Yichud from the bottom up. Haved v'Yichud mamay lamata, top down. The Yichud shneim yachad, and the unification of these 2. So based on all that, all the chapters, and especially this last chapter about the unification of the 3 points, mamat lamay lamata, and the Yichud of both of them, efshel l'shayir, we can possibly presume how the Hemshech would have concluded, meaning after the points we've made, which we already added to what the Rebbe Rashab stops at on page 1472. Which this would also include the connection to the themes discussed in the beginning of the Hemshech, and the general theme, the general teichen of the whole Hemshech. Excuse me? Someone say something to me?
On page 36.
Yeah. 36, page 36 of the essay, yeah. Yeah. Ubahagdim. But to do this properly, I'm going to preface here, Skira the Teichen Hascholas Hemshech, an overview, and the content of the beginning of the Hemshech. What did he actually say in the beginning of the Hemshech? V'hashayla sham, and the questions he asked there, shenishru b'li mayna, that have remained without an answer. The Rebbe Rashab asked a bunch of questions at the beginning of the Hemshech, and he never answered them. So very clearly, had he continued the Hemshech, he would have answered those questions. So this is in addition to all the questions that I already listed in the beginning of this essay in volume 3. The questions, now we're going back to the questions at the beginning of the Hemshech, which is a whole new set of unanswered questions. HaHemshech maschili ma'maimer chazal, the beginning of the Hemshech begins, that's why it's called B'shah Shekdimu, Yisrael Naaseh Nishma, at the time when Israel, when the people of Israel prefaced by Matan Torah, they didn't say, first let us hear and understand, then we will fulfill. They said Naaseh v'nishma. They prefaced Naaseh before Nishma. We will do, and then we will understand, or then we will listen. So the time, the Chazal tell us, when Israel did that, the children of Israel, people of Israel did that, Yordu Malachi Ashoris, the ministering angels descended, V'kishru lahem shnei ksarim, and they weave for them 2 crowns, Echad keneged Naaseh, Echad keneged Nishma. Since they said Naaseh v'Nishma, so they weave one keser corresponding to Naaseh and one corresponding to Nishma. That's how the Rebbe Rashab begins the whole Hemshech. Valzeh shol ad munish seiden kameshailas. And on this Maimer Chazal, the Rebbe Rashab asked a number of questions, and I'm going to list them now, namely 6 questions. And I'm listing them by number. Obviously, he doesn't number them, but if you look at the first page of Ayin Beis, these are all the questions that he asks on this Maimer Chazal, and these questions are never answered. And then he goes into a whole discussion, as we'll see. So it's clear that when he would come to the end of the Hemshech, he'd now say, Al pi kol hanal, we can now understand the answer to these questions. So here are the 6 questions.
Sorry for interrupting. This is not printed on the whole entire thing.
Excuse me?
It's not printed. Until
What's
now,
not printed?
on page 36, it said Ubermaimer Habor Nevaer, and that's it. It doesn't print anymore after that.
I have it open right now, and it's all there.
Okay, maybe you could later print it. Thank you.
I printed it. What do you mean printed? It's on your phone?
No, I have the pages. I printed on pages.
Okay, because you didn't print out all of it, but it's we have it all right here. I'm looking at it right now.
So I'm asking Abisrok if he could send it, because I print out everything that I have.
I'll send you the PDF again. You can either print it again or keep it on your screen.
Okay.
I also don't have.
I will repost Bleenet, or maybe even
It
now.
could be they printed out a version, an earlier version.
Yeah, I'll bet you that's what happened. Okay, Bleenet, guys, look at the WhatsApp
Thank
thread.
you.
I'm going to try and do it right now so you have it for today's class.
You can do it right
Thank
now,
you.
right? Yeah.
I'm going to do it now. Just keep an eye on the WhatsApp.
Okay. Here are the questions. This is the actual language of the Rebbe Rashab. I didn't change the language. I just broke it into 6 numbers. Mashmos ha'inyan hu. What's the mashmos of this Maimer Chazal? What's the chiddush of this Maimer Chazal? Not just that they said Naaseh Nishma, higdimu, b'shah shegdimu Yisrael Naaseh Nishma. So the mashmos of Chazal is that hine shnitni hu de mashanitu lehem aksorim. They were given these crowns that the Malachim weaved, who mipnei shegdimu Naaseh Nishma. Not just because they said Naaseh Nishma, but because they prefaced Naaseh before Nishma. Therefore, they were rewarded with these 2 crowns. Aval im loy hoye magdimim nishma l'Naaseh. I'm sorry. Aval im hoye magdimim nishma l'Naaseh. If they had changed the order and they had first said Nishma and then Naaseh, Lo yoyineshtem ashnei ksarim. They would not have been given the 2 crowns. But then, the second half of the Chazal doesn't seem to make sense. Why? Ushe'emer acher kach echad neged Naaseh. Mashma shashnei ksarim rak mishum she'amru Naaseh v'nishma. It appears from the Lashon that the ksarim are given one keneged Naaseh, one keneged nishma. Shari eino emer echad neged Naaseh v'nishma. He doesn't say in Chazal, one keser is because they said Naaseh v'nishma. Ve'echad neged ma shehigdimu Naaseh l'nishma. It just says that 2 ksarim were given, one keneged Naaseh, one keneged nishma, and the quality of higdimu that they preface is not even mentioned when they give the ksarim. Va'yeh ha'yisrein ma shehigdimu Naaseh l'nishma. Where do you see in the giving of the reward that they're getting the Maila of the Higdimu, which is the main emphasis, the main Chiddush here? In other words, from the beginning of the Maimar Chazal, it's clear that the Maila is the Higdimu. The second half looks like they're just getting one Keser Keneged Naaseh, one Keneged Nishma. That's question number 1. Clear? Okay. Question number 2. Gam tzorich lahavin, mashe nisinus aksarim ha'edei hamalachim. Why was it given through the angels? What's the emphasis that the malachim dafka gave it to them? That's question number 2. Question number 3. Lepomim metzinu. There are times we find the Medrash Rabbah Kadeshim Seif Pasha Chav Dalad. So he's quoting actually a Medrash Rabbah in Kadeshim, the end of chapter 24. Moshe LaMelech. There it says there's an example of a king. Shebnei Medinu Itru Loigimel Ataris. That his people, his subjects, people of his empire, of his nation, they bound for him 3 crowns. And then the Medrash continues. That's the Moshel. Same the Nimshel. Same thing, the celestial higher entities. Elyenim usually refers to angels, but Elyenim means those celestial bodies in heaven. And every day they crown God with 3 crowns. And they correspond to the Gimel Kedushas. Like we say, Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh. What are the 3? They correspond to the 3 crowns. Notel Echad. Hashem takes one of these crowns, V'nosan Bereshe, and places us on his own head. V'shnayim, and the remaining 2 crowns, Nosan Beresh Bonov. He places on the head of his children. So this is another Medrash, and the Rebbe Rashab is now comparing it to this one because they're both about crowns, but there seem to be key distinctions, key differences. Here the crowns are coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And here in our Maimar Chazal, it says the Malachi Asharis come down and create the crowns. However, in the second Medrash, it does say the Elyenim crown God, but who gives us the crowns? It's Hashem. Whereas in B'Shah Shegdima, you don't hear about Hashem giving the crowns. You only hear the Malachim weave those crowns. One Keneged Naaseh, one Keneged Nishma. So basically, he's asking, how do we explain the difference between these two Maimar Chazal? He doesn't say here, what about the 3 crowns and the 2 crowns? He's going to ask that in the next questions. That's question number 3. Question number 4. The Mishnah the Ovis, in Pirkei Ovis, Isa, it says, Gimel Ksarim Hein. There are 3 crowns. Keser Teira, Keser Kohuna, the crown of Teira, the crown of priesthood, v'keser malchus, and the crown of kingship. Then the Mishnah continues, v'keser shem tov eila al gabein, and the crown of the good name rises above those three. The kan omer shekishu lehem rak beis ksarim, and here b'shah shekdimu he says they only bound 2 ksarim. So why is it there 3 and here it's 2? Okay, question number 5. Gam tzarich lahaven masher kosa b'mishnah gimel ksarim hein. Why does the Mishnah say 3 and then enumerates 4? Hari beprotis hein dalek ksarim. Im keser shemtev. It says 3 ksarim, keser teira, keser kuna, keser malchus, and then it says keser shemtev el gabein. So why does he not count that in the number 3? Lo choshiv keser shemtev b'minyan kol aksarim. He only says there are 3 crowns, when indeed there are 4. V'yemer dalek ksarim hem. He should have said there are 4 crowns. Keser teira, keser kuna, keser malchus, keser shemtev el al gabein. And finally, question number 6, Mahu aloshen she'ela al gabeim. What does that mean? What it means they rise above them, upon them. What is the meaning of that statement? Now the Rebbe Rashab, as I said, from there he goes into a discussion. We're going to learn now what he says afterwards. But answers to the questions we don't have. So that's what this chapter is going to be about, this essay. Based on everything we learned, how to explain these questions around the ksarim. Obviously, the key here is what is keser. If we understand what keser is, we can then go back and understand what are 2 ksarim, 3 ksarim, 4 ksarim, etc. So that's what we're going to discuss right now. Everybody understands the questions? Any questions on the questions? Okay. So we're now ready on page 37.
So, but one of the questions, so I understand clearly, when it says that Malachim gave 2 crowns against Naaseh and Ishma, and in the Midrash it says the Eibishter gave them to Bnei Israel. So that's one of the questions. Is what? Okay.
That's question number 3. Okay. Were you guys able to find the end of the essay, Rab Shlomo and...
I did send it on WhatsApp.
Okay, good. And Yuval, I think, though, the 2 people who wanted them. Yeah, okay. Levayazeh, to explain this, how does the Rebbe Rashab continue after he asked the questions? Mamshech admunish meseiden, the Shmoseiden, he continues, the Rebbe Rashab continues, Sha'agimel ksarim b'derech klal heim ba'agimel kavin, that the 3 crowns in general are the 3 tracks, 3 pathways, if you wish. Keser kohuna hu b'kav yamin chesed. Keser kohuna is on the right, yamin, chesed. Keser malchus hu b'kav asmoil, gvura. Malchus is in the kav asmoil, the left side, gvura. V'keser teira b'kav amtzai. And keser teira is in the middle. Umashma sham, in Ayin Beis, it's mashma. Sha'agimel ksarim en keneged teira aveda v'gemilas chasadim. That they correspond to teira aveda v'gemilas chasadim. This is going to be relevant later. Teira clearly is keser teira. But aveda v'gemilas chasadim, chasadim is chesed, and aveda tefillah is gvura. We'll talk later how that's connected to kahuna and malchus. But that's the first thing the Rebbe Rashab says after he asks these questions. And then he writes like this, quote, Ulahovin calls kosav admunish nishmosei. And to understand all this, meaning to understand all these questions that we just asked, the Rebbe Rashab writes, we have to first understand what is the inyan of keser. What is this keser? Yes, a crown, a king wears a crown. Very good. But what does it mean? What's the significance of the level of keser? And this is going to be the central theme of Ayin Beis as we learned. I'll just be quick. We're going to learn it inside here. That Kesser is the ultimate interface between divine and existence. Just keep that in mind. I'm saying it specifically, even though we haven't read it yet, but that is going to be the key point. So the Maimer Chazal is not just a Maimer Chazal, a nice thing that the angels wove 2 crowns for the Yidden, but it's Dafke Ksarim, Kesser. And we're going to discuss what is the 2 Ksarim and what is the 3 and all the details that were just asked. It's really quite eloquent, I could say, once you get to see the whole development of this. So, what is Kesser? What is this thing called Kesser? And the Rebbe Rashab continues, Umevi, he brings and cites from the Pardes La Ramak, Moshe Cordovero, the great Kabbalist, lived in Sfas, similar time, same time as Arizal. So in his classic magnum opus work called the Pardes of the Ramak, in Shar HaKinuyim, Erech Kesser, so he has a gate, he has a section called the section of names, of descriptions, where he goes through different Kabbalistic concepts and entries in alphabetical order. So in Erech Kesser, in the entry on Kesser, he writes the following: Gimel Pirushim Binyan HaKesser. The Ramak, the Rebbe Rashab is quoting from the Ramak that there are 3 meanings in the word Kesser itself. That's how the Rebbe Rashab begins to analyze what Kesser is. And here are the 3 meanings. Echad Meloshen Hamtana, to wait. Kesser means a pause. Kesser from the word, in Ayin Beis you can see the details if you look on page 1. This is all from page 1 of Ayin Beis, literally page 1. Hamtana. Beis, it means Kemashmoi, literally. Kesser v'atara, a crown. Kesser and atara are synonymous, basically. Reish l'chol levushe haguf. Of all the garments of the body, the kesser is the highest one. So when a king wears all his garments, the kesser, the crown, is the garment that's placed on his head. So it's reish l'chol levushe haguf. What is that in Kabbalistic terms? L'chol ha'eres makifim da'atzilis. That all the eres makifim in Atzilis, says the Ramak, what is the top one? The makif above them all, that's the kesser. So that's interpretation number 2. And Gimel, the 3rd interpretation in kesser, Meloshen machtir asatzadik. Machtir satzadik means surrounds, to encompass, to surround something. Loshen sivuv, l'chol atzilus b'teiche, that it surrounds all of Atzilus within it. So it's not just above it, it surrounds it all. Lirmeis el tarach amude er, this is all from the Ramak. This hints to the Kesser is the letters Tov Reish Chaf, 620. So it's hinting to the 620 pillars of light. Hameirim memenu, that radiate from this level of Kesser. Vehem keiches nalamim, these are the concealed faculties, divine faculties. Hashefim air, that flow, transmit energy. Hanelam, hidden energy, el hanatzalim hatachtenim, to the lower emanations. Now this just is, you see, maybe a language you're not so used to, but this is the Ramak's conventional language as he explains Kabbalistic ideas. And the Rebbe Rashab quotes all these 3 I just read. He elaborates a bit more on each of them. But that you can look up if you like. This is all page 1 in Ayin Beis. So far, he's asked the questions. He said they correspond to Kesser Teira, Kesser Kuna, Kesser Malchus. You mean Smail Emtza? And he said, now we have to understand what is Kesser, and he brought 3 interpretations from the Pardes and what is Kesser. And now he's going to explain the Pardes, what this Kesser means in language of Chassidus Chabad. Because this is a bit cryptic, but is the basis of Ayin Beis' explanation of what Kesser is. Let me stop here if there are any questions on what we've learned so far.
Just by way of background, what does it mean to crown a tzaddik? I mean, obviously we know what it means to crown a king, but it's a new concept. Is there a difference?
First, it doesn't say crown a tzaddik, it says to surround. Machtir is a tzaddik, to surround the tzaddik.
Oh, okay. I missed that part, but okay. Doesn't machtir also mean to crown?
That's the second interpretation. We're talking about the third interpretation. She said Loshen Sivuv.
Uh-huh. Thank you.
Umavayer, the Rebbe Rashab continues now and explains. She'in HaKeser B'chinas HaRotzen. This again is now entering into the world of Chassidus Chabad. Because even the three interpretations of the paradise need explanation. What does it mean? And what's the difference between the three interpretations? So he says, Keser is Rotzen. This is, of course, a Chiddush Chassidus Chabad takes everything, Kabbalistic language, and turns it into something mepsari echza lekah, from our flesh, something in our faculties, in our lives, that we can relate to. Since we were created in the divine image, so we can look at our own lives and find ways to explain. If you only learn the Kabbalah itself, very cryptic, very esoteric, and often not understandable if you don't know the code. You start reading all these levels, Atik, Arich, Keser, Chachma, Stima, Chachma, and doesn't explain what they are. It just sounds like a lot of pieces, like formula. Like imagine reading a geometric or a chemical formula. You don't know chemistry. Chassidus comes and explains it in a language of Chabad that we can understand. So he's saying Keser means Rotzen. So Rotzen is Keser. B'chinas HaRotzen. The Rotzen of Hashem. The God's desire, God's will, is called the love. That's what Keser is. Excuse me? You asking something? Okay.
Machtir it's a tzaddik, it's a lashon pasuk in. It's a tzaddik. It's a pasuk.
Okay.
It's a pasuk in Habakkuk.
Okay. Good. So, Keser is b'chinas harotzen, hamamutze b'chol hamadreges. And what is the role of rotzen? As we've discussed many times, God doesn't need any levels. He doesn't need rotzen, he doesn't need chachma, he doesn't need bina. But he created the world in a way that he wanted it to make that we should understand. He wanted us to understand the way he did it with the seichel that he gave us. So the role of rotzen is to serve as an interface, like he's going to explain. If someone does not have a desire, if I don't have the desire to come and teach this class, I wouldn't be teaching this class. If you didn't have the desire, the rotzen, to come and join the class and be part of it and study together, you wouldn't join the class. So the first connection between any entity to another, between you and anything you do, the first thing you need is a will. You want to go outside, you need a will to go outside. You want to stand up, you need a will to stand up, to sit down, to go to sleep, to eat breakfast, to go learn Torah, to daven. Rotzen is the first step that connects you and whatever endeavor or encounter or activity that you're going to do. So Rotzen is the ultimate mamutza, is what he's going to say, which means that Keser is the ultimate mamutza. What I just said right here was one of the, though it sounds so simple, but until the Alter Rebbe taught it in Chassidus Chabad, Mukubalim knew what that meant, but only they did. When someone learned the word Keser, what is a crown? A crown is a crown. You put a crown on a king's head. You crown something. You put a crown, a Keser Torah, a crown on Torah, on Sefer Torah. But once you say it's Ratzin, it opens up a whole new panorama, a whole new vista of understanding that it is the ultimate mamutza b'chol hamadreges on all levels. Hein aksarim aprotim. Both the individual ksarim of Atzilus, of Bria, of Yetzirah, of Asiyah, even Keser within Chachma, Keser within Bina. B'chol ha'elam is the Seder Ishtalshlus. So both the individual crowns in all the worlds, in the entire cosmic order, v'hein aksarim aklolim, as well as the more general and all-encompassing crowns, Kamoy Ak, Adam Kadman, as he explains there, is a Keser Klali. The Keser Pratim, Keser Klali. All the way to the highest levels. Ad lebchinas rotzen haposhet shebe'erein sof lifnei hatzimtzum. All the way to the seamless and shapeless desire of God in Erein Sof before the Tzimtzum, before any existence was in place. It's also called Rotzen Elyon, Ola B'Ritzeinei, that arose in God's desire. That Rotzen is therefore also like a Keser. These are all memutzayim between a higher level and a lower level. Ki al yedei yiseiris haratzen kavyachol, nasim b'bchina shayches el adover sheniseiris. It's tafke through the yiseiris, through an awakening, a stimulation of a desire called ratzen, kavyachol, so to speak. That's what creates a relationship between the one that wants and what he's being stimulated to want. So when we say God said he wants to have existence, the want, the ratzon, is that first step where God says, I'm moving from a state of before, like we learned, with me, he hasn't yet willed it, then he's willed it. Kavyachal, obviously. It's all conceptual time. So before you wanted to build a home, there was no desire, therefore there was no connection to home. Then the day came and you said, I want to build myself a home. I want to buy a home. The Ratzon sets in motion the relationship, so now you're going to, that's going to trigger and generate a series of, a process and a series of events that will help you fulfill your desire. So Ratzon becomes this central interface between the entity that is initiating, meaning in this case the Creator God, and the thing that he ends up wanting. And the Rebbe Rashab gives an example. Like the example in a person, lamata, Adam lamata, a human being here below, the Kedem sheniseder be'eze rotzen le'eze dover, before he was stimulated, before he was aroused to have a desire to any given thing, whatever it may be. Harihu moved l'memenu l'gamri. He's completely detached, disconnected from it altogether, because he hasn't yet developed even a connection. The Einle Shaykh is klal, and he had no relationship with it at all. Ukashen seder the Ratzon, but when the Ratzon is aroused or stimulated or awakened, al zeh, once he has a desire for whatever the given respective thing it is that he wants, that creates a relationship, a connection. So therefore, the word keser in the Zohar and Kabbalistic terminology is essentially the first step where God says, I want this. Once I want it, it begins a relationship. If there's no will, it's not going to happen. Now again, could God have skipped this stage? Of course he could have skipped it. Could have just create whatever he wants to create, but he wanted, again, it should be in a progressive way. It makes sense logically, and it should be in a way that we can retrace the steps and actually emulate them in our own lives. So for us, the same thing is as well. If I want you to if I want something from you, I'm going to have to stimulate your desire for it. And if you don't have a desire for it, you're just not going to do it. Obviously, you can force people to do things, but we're talking about a real relationship where the person is invested and engaged. So that's the meaning of Keser, Ratzon, and the Ratzon is the Mamutza, B'chol HaMadregas. That's a summation of the first, I would say, 2 pages of Ayin Beis. Literally the first 2 pages. One, the questions and the 3 meanings in Keser, and now he begins on page 2 in Ayin Beis. If you look it up, you'll see I don't write the pages because it's all the beginning of Ayin Beis. I thought it was obvious. Maybe I'll add the pages later, but I don't know if we need to. But point being is, that's the first opening of what Keser is. Now, obviously, the more we understand Keser, we can then go back to understand the answer to the questions. But this is where the whole Ayin Beis begins, and we're going to go 1,472 pages at least I would say a lot more than that. I don't know how much more before the Rebbe Rashab would get back to answer these questions. But now we have to understand Keser, and that's what the Rebbe Rashab is now going to focus on in the beginning of Ayin Beis, and this is going to go. I'm going to now give a summary of everything he says about Keser as we go along, following from page 2. Let me stop here again for questions, but the rest of this is going to be a continuation of understanding what this Keser is, and we're going to contrast it with Keiches Pnimium, Eidos Pnimium, the 10 spheres, and you're going to see how the structure of Ayin Beis unfolds. And then we're going to bring it back to that we learned already about Mamat Lamayla, Mamayla Lamata, and then ultimately back to everything about Neshamas, Teira, Mitzvahs, Teira, and then finally back to answering the questions about the beginning of the Hemshech that we just laid out, the 6 questions. Are there any questions about so far what we've learned?
Oh, yeah. Printing mistake. The Ain Loi Shaykh's Klal, it should be Lamed Vov, not Lamed Aleph. Lamed Aleph means no. The Ain Loi, and he is not having any connection.
Okay, good. I'll fix that typo. Yeah.
Oh, I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Rabbi Jacobson, are you saying in the most simplest of terms that Kesser means the will to do something? Meaning before we do something, we have
Yes.
to want to do it. So that abstract term of like the will, wanting to do it, that's Kesser.
Correct.
Okay, now I'm trying to understand it and align it with what I've been taught in yeshiva, that in Seder Hishtalshalit, Kesser is like that connector between different worlds. Like the lowest level of Atzilus, Malchus of Atzilus, becomes Kesser of Bria. So
So just replace the word Keser with the word Ratzon.
meaning that one world has the will to subdivide into another world?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other queries?
Yeah, I have one. I'm at the airport, so I'm sorry if it's too loud. I have to stop talking. But
2 people are speaking on top of each other. 1 second here.
no, that's the airport.
Oh. Go ahead.
So obviously, you're not going to reteach Ayin Beis, but can you, the Kitzur Oregel Achas, explain why crown translates into Ratzon? Like, or is that just an assumption? Like
That's just a given. That's just a given.
Okay.
That's what
Even-
Keser means. Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to learn more. You'll see how it develops.
How is Ratzon differentiated from Nisave Hakadosh Baruch Hu, the word Nisave, that God?
Well, first of all, Nisave Taiva is more connected to Tainug, and that's one. And it doesn't go in that here at all. Basically, Nisave is more that God that starts the process where God desired. Nisave, you can say, evolves into a Ratzon. But you could also equate the two. You could say Nisave, desired, is a form of a Ratzon. It just has more emphasis on Tainug than Ratzon, but you could, sometimes the expression is Ola B'Ritzeinei, it arose in his will. So if you break it down, Nisave is more Tainug and Ratzon is Ratzon, but generally you could equate them as well. You could say God desired. How do you translate Nisave? You could say he desired Adira B'Tachteinim. I was translating Ratzon as desire. You could translate Ratzon as will. But this gets already into the Maimorim that talk about the difference between Ratzon and Tainug, Atik and Arich, which, by the way, are 2 parts of Keser, which we're going to learn about soon. Sometimes the word is that Nisava or Tainug is Pnimius HaRatzon, Chayfetz. This is part of a discussion. We're going to discuss this in some more detail when he starts breaking down Keser into parts. But Keser in general, Ratzon is the most accurate way of describing it. You could say there's a Pnimius HaRatzon would be the Tainug within the Ratzon, which isn't a reason because we know Taiva, there's also no reason. He just desired it. For all practical purposes right now, you can, Nasava, Rotzen can all be in the general same category as God wanting something. Okay. Let me see here. So let me go one more paragraph at least. Kolomer. This means B'chinas HaKeser Mevate Hanesa Merkozi Shel Hemshech Terav. The level of Keser that we just now addressed expresses the central theme of Hemshech Ayin Beis. Ube'etzem, and essentially it's really Hanesa Merkozi Shel Kol HaTeirah, the central theme of the entire Torah. Ubefrat Primis HaTeirah, and specifically the inner dimension of Torah, and that is what? Lahaves memutza ben Ein Sof v'Elamis. Keser captures the central theme to create an interface between Ein Sof and existence, between the divine and existence. So Keser, Rotzen, is that intermediary that connects the two, because like he said, without Rotzen, there's no Shaychus. So the first so-called expression, the first stop, this interface, is the Ratzon is Keser. K'mavur le'il, as explained earlier in this essay, in chapter 1 of this essay, Sha'hemshech me'vayer beprot is kol hashlovim hadrushim. This Hemshech, Ayin Beis, explains all the necessary steps. K'may madrega shel sulam, like the rungs of a ladder, the avni midrach, or like stepping stones. Liyachid elikus, to unite godliness, b'chayenu ha'artzim be'elam hafizi, in our material, physical lives. That is the central theme of all Torah, of all Pnimis HaTorah, of all Ayin Beis. K'may kol memutza, like every interface, shekol u'meshulim v'beis chalokim, that encompasses and is interwoven of both parts. Every memutza, like for example, a translator between Hebrew and English has to know Hebrew and English. Every interface has to have a combination of both elements that it's interfacing and connecting. Hamachaberes. Okay, these are some extra words that should be eliminated, the two parentheses. I see I didn't finally, now I've edited it already, but just skip these parentheses. HaMechaberes ha'elyon v'atachten. So every memutza that connects something higher and lower has to have something from the elyon and something from the tachten, or else it's not a proper interface. Yesh b'chlol is beis dargas belakus. So just like in every interface, it has to combine both elements. That's why we have two levels in general in Elikus. Makif Keser, Hamiyatzig Rotzene Elyon. We have we call the transcendent energy called Keser, which represents the Rotzene Elyon, the supernal desire, God's will. That's the infinite light that's higher than existence, save of Kalalmin. That's one half of the Mamutza. The second half of the Mutza is Ve'er Pnimi Esesfiris, the immanent energy, the internalized energy. Hamiyatzig Eid HaGvul Hamislabish B'Kelim U'Be'elimis, that represents the divine, the finite energy that manifests within the structure, the Kelim, and the structure of existence, Ba'elimis, Mamala Kalalmin. Shal Yad, Shal Yedei Shnehem, Yachad. When these two join together, Shal HaMamutza, of this interface, Naaseh Yichud V'Iskalus Ha'elyon V'Atachten. That creates a joining and a fusion of the higher and the lower, Beta V'Nivra, creator and creation, Ein Sof V'Elamis. the infinite divine light, and existence. So basically, what we see here is like this. Keser in general is Ratzon. That's the interface. But as we're going to learn, Keser is made up of two dimensions. One that relates more to the Ratzon Elyon, God, Ratzon, and the second that's going to be the beginning of the divine energy that enters within existence. Because that's what the Ratzon develops. The Ratzon, in turn, when you want something, you now start building relationship with it. And this is the central theme of all of Ayin Beis, and essentially the central theme of all Torah and Primus Torah specifically. And here I'll stop for today. And then we're going to continue how the Rebbe Rasham now develops and explains what Keser is in detail. Any questions?
Yes, in Kesser, you just said that it has both levels of Sovev and Mamale, right? Within Kesser itself, we always say a Kesser is Sovev column. So, but you're
as we're
saying
you're going to learn that a mamutza is starting to relate to the thing it wants. So it's going to have, when you break it down, you're going to have both components, atik and narich. Don't spell it out yet, but we're going to get there soon. So Ratzon itself has my will, but what is it that I want? So the Ratzon is also going to spell out, I want a house. I want 10 spheres. I want a structured existence. So the will is going to lead to the next step. So yes, in general, Kesed is the Ratzon. But what we're saying now is that this Ratzon is going to break, well, Kesed is going to break into two parts. Just beginning to lay out the structure of it. But it's first the Ratzon is what creates the Shaykhs.
right, but in the Ratzon for my house, to build a house, the house that I have in my Ratzon, my imagination or what I'm picturing.
I just said to you, the Ratzon is going to include what is going to come afterwards, which is going to be the Pnimi. So there is so-called the Pnimi within the Makif, if you wish. That's what you're asking, right?
Yeah, but basically was meaning that within Soviv, within my Ratzon, I can have an imagination of the house, but it's not the actual house. The actual
He didn't
house
say it's the actual house. He didn't say it's the actual house.
But that to have the actual house would be the mamale already.
And there's a mamala within the seviv because it has to come from the Ratzon.
Right. But it's still a level. It's the lowest level within Soviv. Maybe we could say that.
We're going to learn about this at length.
Okay.
This is going to be the two crowns.
And so the Iker is Mamutza or the Iker is relationship are essentially the same thing.
Mamutza is the relationship. Without the Ratzon, without Mamutza, there is no relationship.
Okay. I just want to make sure I heard you correctly.
Could you go over
this is all going to become very clear. Just think practically, you'll see. I mean, you're going to see there's like in mitzvahs, like we speak, Asher Kedishanu b'mitzvahs v'tzivanu is the focus is on the Ratzon, but then it says La'aniach Tefillin, the focus is on the details in the same bracha. So the Ratzon includes the details that the Ratzon wants. We'll spell it out some more at length. You'll see how it develops. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask, yes, thank you, Rabbi. Could you get a little bit more into the difference between Ratzon and Tanug? I mean,
I don't want to do that now at all.
Not now? Okay.
It's a complete tangent. It would be,
okay.
It would just be very confusing.
Okay, all right, thank you.
No, it's a good question, but it doesn't belong here. This belongs a separate discussion.
Understand. No, I was just thinking because Naaseh, is a embodiment of faith that we're going to, like you take a leap of faith. We're saying, okay, and also on a desire, you can ask a question. Also, in a sense, I don't know. It's probably a tangent. Sorry.
I'd be sorry. It's a very fair question, but it deserves its own discussion, its own class. It'll just confuse matters here. My
Okay,
opinion.
thank you.
You should definitely pursue it. If you're interested in this, there are plenty of places that discuss this, Rotzen and Tainug. Yeah. Anybody else wanted to say something or ask something? Okay.
Also, what is higher? Is Rotzen higher or Tainug is higher?
So that I told you is I just said I'm not going to discuss that now. It's a whole different sugya. If you're really interested, go look at the Maimer Vayichulu in Samach Vav, discusses it at length. It's a whole sugya in Chassidus. Big topic. We talked about it also, by the way, at the end of volume 2. Close two-thirds into volume 2 was a whole Maimarim about Tainug and Rotzen, just for the record. But it is connected ultimately because Atik and Arich are Tainug and Rotzen. But I want to, right now is not the right place to go into it. Okay. So I'm going to stop here. We're middle of page 37. Finish the paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 paragraphs. So we reviewed the questions in the beginning of Ayin Beis, started talking about Kesser and Rotzen. You'll see pretty soon, you'll see how it all comes together with everything we've been learning. Okay?
Thank you, Yitzchak, for putting it on the telephone.
I'm glad you found it.
They're
I have my
thanking you,
notes in-
Yitzchak, for posting it.
I realized I sent the version that has a lot of my notes in it, so I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but you'll see all kinds of whatever,
Only until page 36. Now you have until page 47.
Yeah, let me start.